Hello everyone, Ghost is with you, and today we will hear 3 real scary stories that Reddit users have told us. It will be very scary and interesting. To all those who eat, bon appetit, and we are starting. The story of Dr. Karl Tanzler and Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos. Tanzler was a doctor of German origin. He worked in Key West in the 1930s. It was then that he met 21-year-old Maria Elena, who suffered from tuberculosis. At that moment, he had a vision that he had seen as a child. In this vision, he saw his love, and he was sure that the girl from his dreams was Maria. He became obsessed with her and did everything he could to save her. Unfortunately, Maria died in October of 1931. The Tanzler paid for her funeral and the construction of an above-ground mausoleum for her repose. However, his obsession with Maria did not end with her death. In April 1933, Tanzler stole Maria's body from the mausoleum and brought it to his house. He attached piano strings to the bones of the corpse, inserted glass eyes into the eye sockets, stuffed his stomach and chest with cloth, and dressed the body itself in silk outfits. I also made her a homemade wig. These were Maria's real hair, which Tanzler got from her mother, and so he lived with the remains for 7 years, until Maria's sister found out that he was living with a corpse and reported it to the authorities, who then took Maria's body and arrested Tanzler. The dancer was found capable of standing trial, but was released after the expiration of the statute of limitations. Maria's body was taken out of the house and then put on display at the funeral home and then placed back in the cemetery in an unmarked grave. Tanzler moved to Central Florida and painted a giant life-size portrait of Maria, with whom he lived until his death. Perhaps this is not terrible in the traditional sense. In my senior year, I had a friend named Michael. Michael was very sweet and everyone loved him very much. It turns out that Michael took antipsychotics and antidepressants and never told anyone about it, except for a few close people without medication. He imagined burning people running around screaming for help and a lot of other shit that you don't even want to hear about. One day at a party, something was put in his drink because some punk asshole knew that Michael was mentally ill and he just wanted to see how Michael would freak out. After Michael drank this drink, he became really hysterical, desperately running around trying to put out non-existent fires, begging imaginary people to stop screaming. He wept and begged for forgiveness because he could not save them. We had to call an ambulance because no one had any idea what to do. I've never seen a person so freaked out in my life. Michael was strapped down and hysterically taken to the hospital. When he returned, he was nothing but an empty shell. From a charming and funny man, he turned into a man who did not speak, except when he muttered something to himself. In class, he turned his head in paranoia and had an empty expression on his face all the time. I think we saw a smile a few times, but in general, he just looked ahead as if he was hypnotized. In the end, he was taken out of college and placed in a psychiatric hospital because his parents and, frankly, everyone around him knew that he needed help, serious help. After he left, I never saw him again and still can't find him and his family on social media. He just disappeared. In addition, that punk asshole who put something in Michael's drink was beaten so badly not because of this incident and suffered such a serious head injury that he lost his eyesight forever. Most of us considered it a worthy punishment. So a little background. My father served in the army for 21 years, retired and moved to a very small town in Central Florida. After a couple of years, he got bored, and although we didn't really need the money, because my mother worked as an accountant in the tax service, my father wanted to find a job. He started working at various gas stations, and since this is a small town, the owners didn't care that I constantly come to my father. I helped him with his work. All this happened in the late 80s and early 90s, and here is the story itself. It happened in 1990, and I remember that date well because it was shortly after my birthday. I was 15. I lived in Florida and had just received my student driving license, but my father sometimes let me drive his car. I was sitting in my usual place at the table set along the window with a book in my hand. I usually spend most of the evening reading books, getting up at different times to check the cash register, fill the refrigerators. I remember looking out the window because something unusual caught my attention, and I realized that it was a woman who was walking through our parking lot from the interstate. This in itself was extremely strange because there were usually not many people where we were. I thought her car had broken down somewhere and she wanted to use our phone to call a tow truck or something. She went into the store, looked around for a few minutes, and I remember having a strange and creepy feeling towards her. She came up to the counter and started telling my dad the story of how she got stuck and that she needed a ride to the next big city north of us. My father tells her that he can't because he's working. She turns and looks at me, and while she looks away from him, my father catches my eye and barely shakes his head. I was confused for a second, but then she turned to my father and pointed at me, asking if I could give her a lift. Dad lied to her, saying I didn't have a license. Normally I would help a person even though it was illegal, because I've done it before. I did not argue with my father because it was completely out of character for him. He usually chatted with clients, smiled and started conversations, but now for some reason he was very brief with her, and it was obvious that he wanted her to leave as soon as possible. It turns out that he also had a bad impression of her from the minute he saw her walking through the parking lot. Well, this woman swears at him for a minute, and he just tells her to leave the store. She slammed the door so hard that she almost broke the glass. Then she left the store and just walked down the road. It's been almost a year, and I'm sitting in my bedroom. I can hear my dad yelling from the living room, "Son, get your ass over here and look at this." I quickly run into the living room and see my father pointing at the TV. On the screen was a picture of the same woman we met in the store. It turns out that it was Eileen Wuornos. She was a serial killer. She only killed men. On October 9th, 2002, she was sentenced to death by lethal injection. I still have nightmares about what might have happened if I'd agreed to give her a ride. One of my school friends knew an ambulance worker. One day we all got together for dinner. At some point we talked about his work, and we asked what the worst thing he had seen at his job was. He told how one day he got a call about a quarrel between a couple. Anyway, the guy doused his girlfriend with gasoline and set her on fire. When they arrived, she was still burning, crying and shouting sorry over and over again. When it was finally pulled out, it burned to the ground. Her whole skin was black, and she was still alive. When she was loaded into an ambulance, she managed to grab our friend by the clothes and ask, "Am I going to die?" He told her the truth. After he told us this story, we all just fell silent. He asked if anyone else had any questions. Spoiler alert, no one had them. Don't ask doctors about the worst thing they've ever seen. That's all. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you like it, you can like it and write a comment. You can also watch the videos that are currently on your screen.